Turn our attention to municipal matters now, where the City of Tshwane has cancelled the process of awarding a tender. This for distributing water in informal settlements after it detected possible corruption with the potential to taint the contract. Authorities say they made this decision after the newly implemented corruption detection mechanisms in supply chain processes flagged that there was a leak of valuation documentation and a possible compromise in the tender specifications. For more on this, we are joined by former Tshwane MMC for Utilities, Abel Tau. Mr. Tau, a pleasure to have you on the program. What is your initial reaction to the City of Tshwane's decision to indeed cancel the water tanker tender amid these corruption allegations?
Thank you very much, Nsansa, and good afternoon to viewers at home. Look, the initial reaction is always going to be one where we need to welcome any step that is taken to rid ourselves of corruption and corrupt practices. But this is the City of Tshwane. You would remember that just over a year ago, 23 people died in Hammanskraal because, number one, it has been found that the city was complicit, at least by the public protector now. And it was complicit in this way. At the time, the city had brought down the service from, the normal service that it would run for 7 days to about 3 days, and it would skip a day, basically forcing vulnerable people of Tshwane to source water from sources that are unsafe. And therefore, a situation such as this one takes us back to that very same situation that we found ourselves in. And that is why we have been very vocal in speaking out against this. We spoke out against it before the cholera outbreak. We are speaking out against it now because we have always maintained that these are very important services for residents that are very, very vulnerable. Not only do these individuals and families find themselves in a space where they cannot afford water or to buy water or source water from safer sources, but also these are individuals where health care is compromised with the current state of the healthcare system in the areas where we supply this water. And therefore, we are very, very worried. We are calling on the City of Tshwane to not do this. I believe that this has nothing to do with busting corruption, but this is an attempt by the city and the leadership of the city, number one, to intimidate service providers, number two, to obviously, hijack the procurement space, because professionals in a city must be allowed to do their work. And this kind of interference enters us into a very slippery slope where we are going to find ourselves with politicians taking decisions on procurement matters. We saw what happened with Mayor Randall Williams, where he had explicitly given an instruction for a tender to be given to his friends. And this has much of this. The DA and their friends have always been very, very, very hungry to put their hands in the cookie jar. And we are worried that this is happening at the expense of vulnerable people.
Mr. Tau, from what you've gathered, are you able to explain the newly implemented corruption detection mechanisms in the supply chain process? How effective do you think these measures will be in really preventing corruption in future tenders?
Look, it is very unfortunate that the city would say there's new detection mechanism, because I can be honest with you, tender processes are supposed to be transparent, at least by the city's own admission and processes. These processes should be transparent. You know, the bid adjudication committee meetings should be open to the public, the same as the bid evaluation committee meetings should be open to the public. And therefore, you cannot say then there's a leak, because this information should be information that is available to the public. And like I said, I genuinely believe that this is the way that the city is trying, number one, to ensure that it bulldozes itself, especially the city leadership, into procurement processes, and it is a slippery slope. But number two, we know that the city has just passed a budget, which I was very critical to, because this budget does not talk to meeting the needs of the most vulnerable in our city. And this is one way where politicians find a way to absolve themselves of the responsibility, because while this tender is not in place, it means we are going to work on a month-to-month basis as and when, and therefore you find a situation where the service is highly compromised, it is reduced drastically, and therefore they have pushed money into areas such as your watchman services, which is over 300 million put into making sure that they will service security guards which are aligned to AfriForum and their friends. And this is what we have always been saying, that the city of Tshwane has a tale of two cities. There is a city for those who live in the east of Pretoria, who have piped water, who have safe water, and they must also have the city pushing a satellite metropolis station in their area and pushing a bulk of the budget into the security companies to protect those individuals. Meanwhile, you are going to have those people who then are not going to have water, who find themselves in the far north of the city, and that is exactly where your jubilant areas and everywhere where you don't even see metropolis doing work in those areas, and it is very unfortunate. Hence, we need to really stand up as ourselves, as individuals, as civic organizations, and really, this is the work that we have already started doing to say people of Tshwane cannot be subjected to this kind of apartheid style, exposure to really substandard ways of giving them services in the city. And we are going to be really going all out to making sure that residents of Tshwane are conscientized of what they need to do. They need to stand up, and we really did not accept this. But really, I can tell you now that there is no detection mechanisms, because we have been able to detect these. I was an MMC, and we have detected where there was corruption when you do oversight. And when you start having politicians putting mechanisms and other measures on top of what is supposed to be standard procedure, you must know that people want to annex those spaces for nefarious reasons. And this is what is happening in the city of Tshwane right now.
But as things stand right now, this tender has been cancelled. How will the cancellation of this tender then affect the residents of informal settlements who really are relying on water tankers for their daily water supply?
Look, what you are going to have is that you are now going to have excuses. They will not be having water starting from tomorrow. They will not be having water. That's number one. Number two, you are going to have the irregular and fruitless expenditure rising up. This city has been failing to bring that down, let alone get clean audit outcomes. Why? Because there is always now going to be this process of making sure that this service is rendered on a month-to-month basis. Then you are going to have a situation where that is not accounted for, and therefore the city is going to dig itself deeper into the black hole that it is in. But even worse, the city loses over $1 billion in water leaks, in water losses every year. And what you are going to have in this situation is that you are going to have people who are now going to invade water pipelines to make sure that they find water sources that can be safe enough, and it is thereby creating new types of mafias in the different spaces, if I can use that word, where these people will now be giving a service that the city is failing, charging vulnerable people in different communities, and we are really exposing our residents to a situation where they truly are on their own, and there is no government at local level to look after them.
And what are the key aspects that you believe really need to be reworked, if you will, in the tender specifications to ensure transparency and fairness in the re-advertised tender?
Look, I think we really need to obviously work on the idea that, one, the kind of vehicles that are ferrying water to the people. The specification is very clear to say, it would say it is a vehicle either with plastic tankers or with those iron steel tanks. It has to be not older than 5 years, and it will go on and on to say what needs to be done. But unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. And I do agree that to that extent, we need to make sure that the service providers, number one, specifications outline that they should be people who are well versed in the space, so that we do not then give people water that is unsafe. It should be individuals and groups and companies that are well vetted, so that we are sure that these are not people who are also part of cartels that ensure that we cannot give piped water to different communities, and they've been part of the kind of vandalism that has been happening in the city. So that needs to be built into that, I agree. But over and above that, even as we do that, it is very unfortunate because the city could have well allowed a tender to go through now because it's supposed to be public. The excuse that it has leaked is very, very lame at best. And I think that because there are these changes politically, and there is a chance that the ANC might be coming into government in Tshwane, these guys want an excuse to keep this tender so that they are able to entice the new entrants into the space. And therefore, we are about to enter a level that we have never seen of looting, especially when it comes to the water tender process. So it is unfortunate, and this is one thing that would be looking very, very sharply at, to say, is this a way to make sure that the tender is pushed back so that the new guys that are coming in are going to be enticed using the proceeds and kickbacks from these kinds of tenders, because we know that this has been the practice. But over and above everything, I do think that this is a very critical service that is here to addressing a very critical need in the lives of very vulnerable people. And we should never, as leaders in this city, use our leadership position to really undermine and expose people to danger. The last time we had a cholera outbreak, there's families who've lost loved ones. We cannot avoid that situation once more in Tshwane.
That is the former MMC for Utilities in the City of Tshwane, Abel Tau.